Hey guys, it's Katie. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Today's video is going to be sort of just a quick thing. I got a couple things going that I wanted to share with you. A little bit over the board, but this is going to be basics for scratch cooking, or just some ideas to think about when scratch cooking or cooking up what you have in your pantry where you have maybe odds and ends that you don't know where to fit certain things. So I'm going to turn the camera around and show you what I'm working on, okay? Okay, so I'm actually making a turkey for dinner tonight. This is a turkey that I had, you can see it's actually done. I've just turned off the oven and it's sitting in here for now. I always get extra turkeys at Thanksgiving, and a lot of people do that. They're the best price at Thanksgiving, and if you have a large freezer, get a second one. Baking a turkey is no different than baking a chicken, it just takes a little longer. So if you can see, I actually spatchcocked mine, which just means I cut the backbone open and opened it up, but you can just roast it or however you cook it for Thanksgiving. You don't have to do all of the sides and make a big thing. Just bake your turkey and do the kinds of sides you would normally do for chicken. So a veggie and a starch, and you're done. Something else that I like to stock up with at Thanksgiving, because they're available and they're usually a good price, is cranberries. And I actually already threw the bag away. It's already in the garbage can, or else I'd show you. But you just take the bag. These were fresh cranberries that I just took the bag and put them directly in the freezer. So when it comes time to cook your turkey that you're hanging on to, it's nice to have cranberries. I like to have cranberries with turkey. So if you're going to get an extra turkey, consider getting an extra bag of cranberries, or an extra can if you use whatever. Okay, so going with that, we don't have a lot of stuff left in the pantry. We do need to go grocery shopping. I'm trying to put it off as long as possible. I made some stock using some scraps that I've been collecting, just veggie scraps. A lot of people do that, keep their veggie scraps in the freezer, and then you can pop them in. So I use what comes out of the turkey, so like the turkey neck and then the other parts of the gizzards or whatever they're called, to make some stock. I'm going to use that stock to make some stuffing. Now, I keep this bag in the freezer. If you have ends of bread, like these are just perfectly dry, this can actually go in the pantry, but I just keep them in the freezer, and then if you have a bag like this, you can continuously add to it. So sometimes I will rip it up before it dries, and that makes it just that step easier. If I need to use it for breadcrumbs, it's easier to put in the blender or the food processor to grind them up. And if you want to use them for stuffing, then this is a good size. You can just use them straight. These actually, I just let them dry whole, so this is going to take a little muscle to break these up, but it's no big deal. I can just probably smash them like that, or just break it like that. It's just easier to do it if it's somewhat soft still. So this isn't very much bread. It's not going to make a lot of stuffing, but I'm going to also do we have some frozen vegetables, and I might do something else to go with it. So to make stuffing, you just need dried bread, and then stuffing is basically seasoned bread casserole. If saying it that way helps you understand how to make stuffing from scratch, then there you go. So dry bread, and then you season it. So I got my stock, and then I'm going to add some veggies. Celery, if you can get a hold of it, stays in the refrigerator for several weeks. So if you have the ability to grab two, and you're not going to be going to the store again soon, grab two, and they should hold up in your refrigerator. Onions this time of year, I don't usually get extra onions because they do this in the springtime. They're still edible, of course, and this one I was going to use no problem, and then I found this one. This one I'm actually going to put in the garden, and as this grows up, it'll turn nice and green. It's kind of yellow now because it was in the dark pantry, but as soon as it gets some sunlight, it will green up, and then you can cut them off and use them like scallions. And because you can see how much of this is already growing, there's probably not much to get in the way of actually using this as an onion. So I'm going to just dig a hole and put this out in the garden. If you don't have a garden, just a flower pot or any kind of container with some dirt in it, and put this in there and let it grow. This one, since it's just a little, I probably will go ahead and cut this up and use it as onion, and then I have another onion. So bread, onion, celery, stock, and then if you have seasonings, something like poultry seasoning or sage would be a classic pairing to make some stuffing. So I have this. I'm going to break this up, I'm going to dice these up, I'm going to saute them, and then I'm going to add all of this together with the stock, with the seasoning, put it in a casserole dish, and bake it. So I'll show you what it looks like when I get to that step. Before I forget about the cranberries, so the cranberries were frozen. They were like frozen solid. They're starting to thaw, so they were just frozen solid. I rinsed them. And they kind of like stuck together because they were frozen. So just run a little warm water on them so that you can rinse them clean, and that kind of thaws them a little bit. And then to make homemade cranberry sauce, it's the bag of cranberries, which I think is 3 cups, and then it's a cup of water, cup of sugar, and then you just turn it on, bring it to a simmer, let it simmer for 10 minutes or so, or however long you want to let it simmer, and then take it off the heat, let it cool, and then you have cranberry sauce. You can make that ahead of time too. So I actually, since the turkey's done, this should already be done, but this is where we're at. Because they're frozen, it's going to take a little bit, so make sure you calculate that into your time. So we're going to have turkey, stuffing, cranberries, and then I'm probably going to just do frozen veggies because that's pretty much what we have left at this point in the house. I was thinking of doing like a corn casserole, like a baked corn casserole, which would be a good option because I have a lot of frozen corn. I don't have a lot of milk and eggs. I just made almond milk today, so maybe I will. I can show you that. That would be a good way to use up frozen corn. Okay? So I'll get the stuffing made up, get this started cooking, and we'll get the corn casserole mixed up too. Alright, so this is a tip that you've probably seen a lot, but keep your veggie scraps, keep them in the freezer, use them to make stock. So this is the container, I just keep it like this. I don't even usually wash it in between. I just used it. There was just a couple carrot peelings and some onion ends, so that went into that stock. So I'm just going to put this in here. So I wash the outside of the onions since I'm going to put them in stock. I never used to really wash onions before peeling them, but I don't know. If there's anything on the outside of the onion, it's not necessarily going anywhere. Like if it's actually particulate matter, it's not going to go anywhere when you make stock. So I don't want dirt in my stock. So this onion is a little bit long in the tooth. I'm going to have to remove some of it. Perfectly good. It's just the texture is a little bit off. You can see in the middle where it's growing. So I'm going to open this up and see. Yeah, see, it's not even that much. Just cutting the top off got most of that. So I'm going to use all of that. The texture might be a little bit different, but it's perfectly fine. This onion seems okay. There's not any growth coming out of it, so cut the top and tail off, peel the outside layers off, and then I'll dice these up. Same with the celery. I trim pretty sparingly on the celery. I see people who cut like this whole white part off. It's all perfectly edible. Sometimes I will shave the edges because there'll be like it's like a membrane there. But I just take like the part where it attaches, make sure all the dirt is scrubbed off, and then these little membranes on the side like that. That way you don't have to waste as much. And then I just cut off the ends because they've been dried out. And this part right here is kind of a knuckle. I sometimes will cut that out. So I want to use this that's above. Sometimes they can be a little tough, but these ones seem fine. So I'm going to cut it to here. I'll cut that piece out. That will go in the stock, and then I'll use the whole amount here. So I got onions and celery. I'm going to go out in the garden and get some sage. Alright, so I got some fistfuls of plants here. I got some chives, which it's nice to have chives. These just grow back every year. I have regular onion chives and garlic chives. I let the seeds throw themselves in the herb garden and they come back every year. So if I didn't have onions, I could use this in place of green onions. It also gives a mild onion flavor. It would be better than nothing if I wasn't able to get onions. I got some parsley, same thing. I let it grow, it throws its own seed, it comes back on its own every year. And then I got sage, which is more of a perennial herb, so as long as you keep it pruned back and take care of it, you'll have sage forever and ever and ever. So I'm just giving these a quick rinse. If you don't have herbs growing, I would recommend getting some started, especially if you're having another garden, but if you don't have a garden, you should have at least herbs, because, for example, this meal is going to be old, stale bread, a half-grown onion, and a couple of stalks of celery, and stock made out of scraps. But it's going to taste good, it's going to taste fresh, and it's going to taste delicious because I have the herbs. So these are grown in my front yard. I take care of them and I know what goes on them. So I just rinse them to get the dirt off of them. So don't have to worry about that. And because these plants, they grow so wildly, I'm not usually super picky about when I pick them. Like, I just yank them off. I don't even worry too much about it. And then I'll just chop this all up together. The cranberries here, oh yeah, you can see it in frame. Cranberries are starting to pop. I'm going to turn it down just so it doesn't sputter and splatter. And because I just dumped the sugar and the water in there, I don't want if the sugar's settling on the bottom, I don't want it to burn. So I'm just going to give it a stir here. I don't even remember what the recipe calls for. I'm just going to let it cook while I sit here. You don't want to be a slave to recipes. Alright, so just going to cut some sage. The sage has a woodier stem, so I do just like cut it off like that. I think you missed all of that. I just cut the leaves off. And then this I could put in that stock, the veggie scraps too, but I probably won't because, I don't know, sage in stock might not make it as all-purpose as I'd want it to be. But parsley is really good, and the chives would be really good. I probably won't have any scraps from those though. I'm just going to chop them all up. And my herb garden is in the front of the house. It makes it really easy to get to. My front garden and my back garden are both pretty easy. That's one of the benefits of living in a smaller house. They're easy to get to and accessible from my kitchen, but it's actually a flower bed, and I turned it into my herb garden. So if you think you don't have a place for an herb garden, just think outside the box. Alright, so that's quite a bit of herbs. Let me see if I can point you down. It's like a good, like almost a handful, but fresh herbs you usually use a lot more because they're fresh, and it will give a lot of nice flavor to, like I said, this is going to be a pretty simple dish, simple recipe here. So I'm not even going to mix it up in a mixing bowl. I'm going to mix it up in the saute pan. Alright, in this is the pot that I cooked this stock in, and there was the liver. There's also the heart and the neck. I'm going to cut up the liver. I eat chicken liver, so I don't see why I can't eat turkey livers. I'm going to chop it up and I'm going to put it in the stuffing. Chop it up fine enough and nobody will even know. If you really don't like chicken livers or you don't like the idea of putting turkey livers, feel free to omit. I'm just giving you some ideas so that you can make the most use of what we have. Alright, so put that in like that and go ahead and chop up the veggies since I'm right here. Alright, I think that might be all the onion I'm going to do. I have this whole other onion that I peeled, but since I have such a small amount of bread, I'm probably not going to do it with that other onion. So I cut down to where that knuckle is, pop that piece off, and I'll put that in the stock bag or whatever in the freezer. Same with the celery. I'm not going to do that third stalk, and the 2 stalks was probably too much. I probably should have just done 1, but it's already chopped, so we're just going to go with it. This isn't really a recipe. This is just a, you know, I'm throwing stuff together to make dinner for my family. So I'll put this in a container and make sure I save it in the refrigerator. This will go back in the fridge for another time too. Alright, so this pan is a little bigger than I need, but you want to use larger than you think you need because I'm going to go ahead and saute the veggies and the herbs and some oil, get them started and get them going, and then I'll add the stock and then I'll toss it in. So I'm going to use this as my mixing bowl too, so you want to make sure you have enough room for that. Turn this on. Ideally for this you would use butter. That's what I usually use when I make stuffing, but I have more olive oil than butter or margarine at this point, so I'm just going to use couple tablespoons just to saute. Just gonna throw it in. I'm not even waiting for it to heat or anything like that. It'll be fine. I do have other bread that's not dried out, that's not like wasted bread. So if this turns out to be really, really small amount for the amount of veggies I already have cooking here, I do have other bread I can add. I just would rather not use that bread since it's still good to be used as bread. And this is more of a recipe to use up the stuffing, but I also need to have enough of a side dish to feed my family. Alright, you want to season. The stock has seasoning, and this bread has salt in it when it was made. So I'm just basically seasoning the vegetables, which is just a little bit of onion and a little bit of celery, so you don't need much. There's a lot of flavor in those herbs, so if you don't have fresh herbs, now you could put dried herbs. Especially poultry seasoning would give this a classic stuffing, celery and onion stuffing flavor. I'm actually going to turn the heat off on the cranberries. They've come to a boil. I see a lot of them popping. I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm just going to let that sit while I work on the stuffing. When I make this, like for Thanksgiving, and it's a special, like, decadent sort of thing, I put like a whole stick of butter in here, and so it will be like boiling in butter, basically. I just put enough oil to keep it from sticking to the pan for tonight. I'm just going to saute that till the veggies get a little soft. And I guess I'll clean up a little bit here, and then we'll start on the corn casserole. My daughter just brought me a flower. Picked from my own garden. Thanks, sweetie. Put that right there. So everybody can enjoy it. See it? Isn't that nice, tulip? Alright, it's all good. So this is starting to soften up. I'm going to add the stock. A tip about making homemade stock, especially if you're using like veggie scraps, I didn't do it, but taste it before you add it. Sometimes I made one time, and I put, I think I put cabbage cores in it or something, cabbage and broccoli, and sometimes depending on if like you have a lot of a certain ingredient that you used up, and I don't know, sometimes the stock just has a strong flavor. You might want to cut it with some water or something. I didn't, since I knew that was mostly just the neck. So now we have like onion and celery soup, like that. Hopefully it's not too much. Like I said, I have other bread, but it's not dry, so it will absorb less moisture. Go ahead and put the bread in. See what it looks like. Let it sit here. It looks like that. It still is a little soupy. I'm going to let it sit. It will absorb some water. I probably will tear up some other bread in here. Let me see what I got. I just baked this bread, so it's pretty moist. It probably won't do much in the way of soaking up much liquid. I could toast it, I guess. I'm just going to tear it up and throw it in now, just to kind of bulk out the recipe and make it more proportionate to the bread to the veggies. I got to get this cranberries to cooling because it takes a while. Oh, I think that's perfect. So now, I don't know if you can see that liquid down there? That'll probably absorb as it sits here a little bit longer. You don't want it completely soaked up because we're going to bake this a little bit. That is our stuffing for now. Set that aside, and we'll get it in a baking dish and put it in the oven. I gotta get the turkey out of the oven, it's just sitting there. Alright, so see how loose and runny the cranberries sauce is? It's like watery. The cranberries have natural pectin, so it's gonna thicken up without adding any ingredients to thicken it. So this is just water, sugar, and cranberries. And if you don't have cranberries and you grow rhubarb, that would be a good accompaniment for meat a lot of times too, like stewed rhubarb you can serve pretty much like stewed cranberries. So I have rhubarb grown in the backyard, if I didn't have the cranberries in the freezer, I could consider doing the rhubarb. Alright, so I want this to cool quickly, so I want to put it in a large, shallow vessel so that when it goes in the refrigerator, there's more surface area and it will cool faster. Alright, so ideally I would use something metal because it will pull the heat away, it will conduct the heat away faster. So if you look over here, I don't want to pull it out, but like right here, this baking sheet with a lip around it, this would be the best because I could get a much thinner layer and it would be metal and it would cool faster. I don't really feel like putting something that big in my fridge for this, so I'm going to use this just 9 by 13. You probably can't see because it's clear. It's just a 9 by 13 cake pan. If you were making this and you had plenty of time to let it cool naturally, just put it in the serving dish. Go straight from the cooking vessel to the serving dish. And then put saran wrap over it, or if your serving dish has a lid, then you can take it straight out of the refrigerator to the serving table, which is a good tip for Thanksgiving too, when you might want it to actually be in a nice container. For something like a regular weeknight dinner like this, or it's actually Sunday tonight, but I will just probably put it in a cereal bowl. But since it's kind of in a thin layer, it should cool faster. I'm going to stick it in the refrigerator. Alright, just kidding. I'm going to let it sit on the counter for like 5 minutes because it's boiling and steaming hot, and then I'll put it in the refrigerator. This is my bread bag. It's not marked. I'm actually going to mark it right now, and I'm going to store this in the freezer so that whenever I have more bread to put in it, I'll have a bag that I've already used. Alright, so we'll get started on the corn casserole. I have a little bit less corn than I thought. This is a large bag, so I have a lot of corn, but it's less than I thought. So I'm going to do just a small serving of this. So between the small serving of stuffing, the small serving of corn casserole, and then I'll see what else I can whip up. I might have to get a can of vegetables. I have some canned green beans I might do, just to have, so everybody can have a little bit of a lot of sides. So we're going to do this in the 8 by 8 pan. Usually when I make this, I make like a 9 by 13, and it's a family favorite, but we gotta use what we got here. So this is what I do. You can grease the pan. I don't usually, and I usually mix it right up in the pan. And I don't measure, and I don't have any measurements for you, so hopefully you can follow along. So you put some rice, listen to me. Put some corn in, and you want like maybe an inch or half an inch, however much will fill the container partially, because you're also going to add some other ingredients. Alright. So that's the stuffing. I am going to press it down lightly, but not too much. And again, if I were making this for Thanksgiving, it would have a lot more butter in it, or I would put like dots of butter on top so that it gets nice and golden brown and delicious and decadent on top. I'm not going to use the butter for that today. Alright, I'm going to have a lot of casserole dishes and a lot of pots and pans to wash. But we're going to have turkey dinner during the quarantine. Alright, I got to get this turkey out of the oven. And then it's got a lot of juices here, which I could have used in the stuffing. I could make gravy. Actually, I might make gravy. We don't have any potatoes or anything, though. Or I might just save it, and then, because I'm going to be making soup, of course, with the leftover turkey, so maybe I'll just save the drippings and the juice. There is my beautiful spatchcock turkey. And turn the ovens back on, or let it come back up to temperature, and we'll put the stuffing in. And everything's cooked through with this, so you're just kind of cooking it so that it comes together. So I'm actually just going to put this in the oven. Since I don't know how long I'm just going to bake it till it looks done, or until we are ready to eat. So hopefully I'm not destroying everybody's illusion of me, that I'm organized and I have everything together and that I follow recipes and that I know anything about anything. I just wing it all the time. Alright, so basically it's corn, eggs, and milk, and then you season it. Salt and pepper is pretty much all I do. And then you can put some butter on top to make it nice and golden brown. I have, this is almond milk that I just made today. I'm going to use this so that I can have some of this as well. Also, the cow milk is needing to be used for the children and for cereal and things like that, so we'll use the almond milk. So just mix that around. And then basically the recipe is like equal parts egg to milk, and you want to have enough that you're kind of covering the corn. If it's not perfectly covered, that's fine, because of the eggs it will puff up a little bit. So an egg is about 1/4 cup, so if you use 2 eggs, use about 1/2 cup of milk, or milk substitute, and go from there. You can crack them into a separate container and beat them and then add them. It's probably what you should do, especially if your corn is still frozen. But I go like this. You just beat it up, mix it around with the corn, mix it around with the eggs. Alright, so before I get too far along mixing it, I'll go ahead and season it. Salt and pepper, like I said. There's no seasoning in the corn, there's no seasoning in the milk, and there's no seasoning in the egg. So go ahead and season generously. If you're using canned corn and it has like salt in it, then just keep that in mind. I've never made it with canned corn. I don't usually keep canned corn on hand, so if you do make it with canned corn, leave comments down below and let me know how it turned out. Another option you can make for like a corn side dish, if you have some frozen or canned corn and like one of those cornbread mixes or the ingredients to make cornbread, just make a recipe of cornbread and then add a bunch of corn to it, and maybe like more milk than the recipe calls for, or an extra egg, and it makes it like a softer kind of cornbread, corn casserole, I don't know. There's a lot of different recipes that are called corn casserole. Growing up, we call this corn pudding. Some people call the cornbread with corn in it corn pudding. Corn casserole kind of applies to both, so if you've ever had anything like this, let me know what you call it. Alright, so I just pat it down a little bit like that. You can see it comes up over most of the corn. The egg and the milk will puff up, so it will probably pretty much encase the corn. You don't want too much corn above the liquid, because this, like when it cooks, the skin will get kind of chewy and hard, and it's not good. So you want it to be like encased in custard. But so we'll have that, and I'll go ahead and throw that in the preheating oven too. This is cold because the corn is frozen, and if I put freezing cold glass into a hot oven, it may crack. So putting it in now while the oven's still preheating is actually a good idea. Alright, so took a minute, cleaned up the kitchen a little bit. The turkey is resting. I'm getting ready to cut that up. I'm going to save the drippings. You can see that. Let me take you off the tripod here. There's quite a bit of drippings and stock, if you can see it moving there. And it's a beautiful golden brown color. The turkey looks really nice. I'm going to carve that up in just a second. Give you a peek into the oven. We got the stuffing. I was just looking at it, and it's not crusty on top. It may not get crusty if I don't add more fat to it, since this is kind of a lean recipe. So that's what it looks like. I jiggled it so you can see that it's set in the middle. It didn't puff up a lot, but it looks like it'll be okay. Since it didn't puff up, it's not nearly the volume that I thought, so we'll figure it out. All right, here is a look at the cranberries. It's thicker than it was. It's not quite set. I don't think you could scoop it out with a spoon, but feeling the bottom, it does feel like it's a little warm right in the middle. If I stir it up, it might help it, but I'm just going to let it sit because we still have some time before dinner. Alright, I'm going to carve up this turkey, and we do this for Thanksgiving too. I have these huge plastic containers, and I carve the turkey right into these. I do one for like the meat that we're going to access for leftovers, and then one is going to be for bones and stuff that's going to go into a stock. Especially on Thanksgiving, I don't usually make my stock the same day, or if I do, I make it in the evening. So we just put it in this to get it out of the way, and then this will be what we actually get into for leftovers. And then I do portion just a small amount for the dinner. We don't like make the fancy platter with all of like the whole turkey and bring it to the table. That's unnecessary for my family, and so we just do it this way. That way, once it's carved, you can take what you're not eating and put it away right away, so you don't have it sitting out and taking up room on your counter, and just, it's not necessary. I'm going to strain these drippings, and of course save them. Can you see? Just gotta be careful. Oh, you know what? I think I did not mention. This is a larger than normal sheet pan, so spatchcocking a turkey on a regular size sheet pan is not going to work unless you have a much smaller turkey. This was an 18-pound turkey, or nearly an 18-pound turkey. Let that run. So this is actually not a half sheet pan, this is called a 3/4 sheet pan. I can link it on Amazon. I love it. It makes everything so easy. I have a small family. I only have 2 children, and they're 6 and 3, so they're not eating huge portions just yet. And the half sheet pan for roasting vegetables or something, it's just not enough for us. So having this is nice. The only thing I don't like about it is it doesn't fit in any cabinet, so that's why I started putting stuff just like there against the wall. So not the prettiest, but functional. And then we'll get these drippings as well. Press that through a little bit, make sure you get all that goodness. See, there's a good layer of fat, so I have plenty of fat if I wanted to make gravy. I think I will not make gravy. First of all, this video is going to be super long, and it's 6 o'clock, so my family probably will want to eat soon. I'll pull those casseroles out and show you what they look like. I guess I could wait to wash my hands before I speak, before I'm done speaking. I'll pull the casseroles out so you can see what they look like, and then I'll show you I'll just probably show you a snapshot of the plate all served up. Okay, so you can see our turkey dinner.